Ever placed a score label in SpriteKit only to find it suddenly off screen or behind something on another device? In this video, I'll show you how I like placing UI so it looks perfect on every iPhone and iPad. We'll build a simple project with a score label in the top left, a pause button at the top center, and a lives counter in the top right, all safely clear of the notch or dynamic island. We'll also add a virtual controller in the bottom left while avoiding the home indicator area. In general, we'll use anchor points to place things neatly in the corners. 0.1 for top left, 0.51 for top center, 1.1 for top right, and 0.0 for bottom left. That works great for sprites, but for our top left label, we'll handle it a little differently. And if you're not familiar with anchor points, I've got a whole video on that you can watch first. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that depending on the scale mode you choose, the view might be a different size than the scene. In this example, we are building a portrait game where the default scene size is larger than the view. And since we are using aspect fill, parts of the scene are cut off. I've also done a full video on scale modes if you want to dive deeper into that topic. If we just place our UI elements around the scene's edges, there's a good chance they'd be partly or even completely off screen on some devices. What we really want is to place them relative to the view's edges, so they are always visible, no matter the device or orientation. By default, our game scene has an anchor point of 0.5, 0.5, which puts the origin right in the middle of the scene. The view, on the other hand, uses a coordinate system where the origin is in the top left corner. So when we are placing UI, we need to keep in mind that the scene's coordinates and the view's coordinates don't match directly. Next, let's extend skScene with a small helper that gives us the scene's edges in view coordinates. This way we'll always know where the top, bottom, left, and right really are, no matter what device we are on. We create a simple edges struct to hold those 4 values. Then inside the extension, we calculate the view size and use convert point to translate positions from the view's coordinate system into the scene's coordinate system. For example, the view's 0 point is the top left corner. When we convert that, we get the top and left edges in scene coordinates. Then we do the same for the bottom left and top right corners of the view to find the bottom and right edges. Now, anytime we need to place UI, we can just call edges and align things to the edges of the view instead of guessing or hard-coding values. Now that we've got a way to calculate the view's edges inside the scene, let's set up our game scene with the UI elements we want to place. We'll start with a score label. This is just an SK label node with some basic styling. Notice we set the horizontal alignment to left and the vertical alignment to top, which will make it easier to position against the top left edge later. Next, we've got a pause button, which is a simple sprite using an image named pause. Its anchor point is 0.51, so that the node's top center lines up with wherever we place it. Then there's a joystick image that we'll use for the virtual controller. Its anchor point is 0.0, so that its bottom left corner snaps cleanly to the bottom left edge of the view. For the lives, we've got an array of 3 hard sprites. Each one has an anchor point of 1.1, so they'll be easy to stack from the top right corner inward. And finally, just for demonstration, we add a player sprite in the scene, so we have something visible while setting up the UI. At this point, we are just preparing all the nodes. We haven't positioned them yet. That comes next. So now that we've prepared all our nodes, the next step is to add them to the scene. That's done in dit move, which runs when the scene is first presented in the view. Here we set the background color and add each node. And instead of positioning the nodes here, we create a separate method called layout UI. Right now it's not strictly necessary, but keeping the layout in its own method will be important later when we introduce safe insets. Inside layout UI, we use our edges helper to place the elements. The score label goes top left, the pause button top center, the joystick bottom left, and the hearts are stacked along the top right with some spacing. Now that we have layout UI, we need to make sure it actually runs. We do this in the game view controller inside View the Layout subviews, which runs when the scene appears. Now let's take a look at how our app looks when we run it on an iPhone. All of our nodes are positioned correctly at the edges, thanks to our layout UI method. But notice that because of the rounded corners, some small parts of the nodes might not be fully visible. It can be even trickier on a newer iPhone with a notch or dynamic island. The corners can be even more rounded, and some nodes can overlap the notch or dynamic island area. This shows why we need to account for safe edges so our UI stays fully visible and doesn't interfere with system areas. To handle areas like the notch, the dynamic island, and the home indicator, we can extend our SK scene with safe edges. First, we get the safe area insets from the view. Then we create a new property called Safe Edges, which works like our previous edges helper, but takes these insets into account. We convert points from the view's coordinate system into scene coordinates, offset by the insets. Now that we have safe edges, we can update our layout UI method to use them instead of the regular edges. Now, when we run the app with safe edges, you can see that all the top nodes are nicely positioned below the dynamic island, and the virtual controller sits comfortably above the home indicator. Everything is fully visible and no longer overlaps system areas. To make the layout look even nicer, we could also add some custom margins. That way, the UI won't sit right at the very edge of the safe area, and it will have a little breathing room. In game scene, we create a layout margins property with a small inset for each side, top, left, bottom, and right. Then we create a new property called layout edges. This works like safe edges, but it also applies the margins. For example, the top edge is the safe edges dot top minus the top margin. Now that we have layout edges, we can update layout UI to use it instead of safe edges. It's a simple swap, but it gives our UI a bit of breathing room from the edges of the screen. And here's the app now with everything in place. All the top nodes sit nicely below the dynamic island. The virtual controller is comfortably above the home indicator. And thanks to our custom margins, nothing is too close to the edges. Before we wrap up, there are a couple of things to note. First, the margins we added are fully customizable. You can adjust them to whatever feels right for your game, giving your UI as much or as little breathing room as you like. Second, the reason we call layout UI from view.layout subviews is important. At this point, the view's safe area insets are already known. If you try to position the UI in did.move, the insets might not be available yet, so our nodes could end up in the wrong place. This ensures everything is positioned correctly from the start. That's it. We've seen how to position UI in SpriteKit using safe edges and custom margins, keeping everything visible and looking good. It works in portrait or landscape, though handling both at the same time can be trickier depending on your setup. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.